Hey, just a second ago, I was talking to you guys about case endings. And I was using a first declension word, but I was kind of just talking about the endings in general. And I showed you the endings for the first declension, the second declension, and the third declension. But I promised another video on the third declension because the third declension has an issue going on that none of the other declensions do, and that's stem changes. All right. So let's talk about those real quick. This is a great example of a third declension word, and it's one that we've seen quite a few times. It was in a bunch of your homework exercises and junk like that, right? And so what I have listed up here is walks, walkis. Again, that's the nominative genitive form. Just like in the last video, I was saying anytime any noun ever gets introduced to you, it's always going to be introduced with its nominative and genitive ending, but you'll notice here, I didn't only write the ending on this one. I wrote the entire word out. And that's because the third declension is different than the other declensions. It is characterized by a stem change. This didn't happen in the first, right? In the last video, when I used "wea" as an example, the stem of that word is just vi. Wea, wei. The vi part never changes. The a changes to ae and ae, am, long a. And then on the plural side, ei, aram, is, asis, right? It changes to stuff. But the vi never does. However, if you were to only see the nominative form of this particular word, you might think that the stem has an X in it. But it doesn't. Because when you see the genitive form, it's vocis, and not only is there no X in the genitive, but there's no C in the nominative. And again, if you didn't know anything else, you might assume that, okay, well, maybe the stem is just VO, and maybe X is an ending, and then it changes to C, but that is not, in fact, the case. That is a stem change. The X has changed into a C. And you can see that here in the full table. Now, I did show you the third declension endings in the last video, so this is a bit of an overlap, but here I have not just the endings, but the actual stem change in front of it. So what you see here is that the nominative form looks one way, and then the stem changes into the genitive, and then after the genitive, you just keep using that stem literally everywhere else. The only spot where you might not use that is the vocative, which I didn't write down. But otherwise, everywhere except that nominative singular, you are in fact using the same stem, and that stem is VOC. And what's convenient about this particular word is that it means voice. And if you know anything about the word voice, you know that we actually derive a lot of words in English from it. And every single one of those words we derive in English from it has a C in it and not an X. And the reason is because the actual stem of this is walk, V-O-C. So when you describe something as having to do with the voice, you use the word vocal. You don't say voxel, you say vocal, right? And other similar words all have VOC because VOC is the stem. Now, here's the tricky thing about the third declension is you really have to have the nominative and full genitive there if you want to know what's going on, because you need to, number one, know what change is happening in the stem, but you also need to know if a stem change is happening at all, because when I say that it's characterized by a stem change, that's not a guarantee that there will be one. Like, for instance, another word that we've seen already, and one that we're familiar with from English as well, is the word senator. Well, you'll notice there is no stem change in senator. The senator that you see in the nominative form still exists in the genitive. It just has an is added to it. And you know what? Totally fine. That's totally fine. If you decline it, that just means you use senator as your stem, and then you add on the endings, and they're going to be the exact same endings as this. The is, ema, es, ibus, es, ibus. In fact, it doesn't even matter if the noun is feminine or nominative, because the word voice, walks, walkis, is feminine, and the word senator, senatoris, which means what it looks like, senator, is in fact masculine. All right? So it actually, literally does not matter if it's masculine or feminine. It does matter if it's neuter. I'll get to that in a different video. All right? But it does not matter if it's masculine or feminine. You just use those same third declension endings, but you do need to know, because like I said, there may be a stem change, there may not be a stem change. In senator, there's not one. In walks, there was. In canis, there's not really one. It's just canis canis. In fact, not only is there no stem change, but the nominative even looks exactly like the genitive. But, that's not a thing you have to worry about. All that you need to worry about is that you're going to base your stem off of whatever you do see in the genitive. So if there's a change like there is in walks walkis, then that means you will look at the genitive and see that C and continue to use C's. If, like senator, there's no change, well, then you're just going to use senator and add your ending there. But you're going to base that on looking at the genitive. If it's like canis and they're literally identical, that's fine. But make sure you base your stem off of what you see in the genitive. So in this word, it would be can. Or for that matter, if this is the word dog, for that matter, it might be a word like cat, where they're almost the same, but not quite. Again, not a thing you need to worry about. You just have to know that you're going to look at that genitive and use whatever it is. All right? Now, lucky for us, there are kind of a lot of third declension nouns, and we actually derive a ton of words from them in English. In fact, a lot of them we just straight up borrow. And so sometimes the stem change might seem weird and everything, but these are words that we actually are familiar with. So like, here's one really common pattern that shows up a bunch. Libertas. Now you might look at libertas and think, that kind of looks like liberty. That's because it is liberty, all right? And in fact, we have a ton of words in English just like this, where it ends in ts in Latin, but in English it would end in ty, and it's the same word, and it basically means the same thing. But this is one where there is, in fact, a stem change, because you can see here the genitive is libertatis. So if you were to decline it, you would have libertas at the beginning, and then that s in the nominative changes into a t, and you add your third declension endings after the t. All right? So you end up with libertas, libertatis, libertati, libertatem, libertate, libertates, libertatum, libertatibus, libertates, libertatibus. All good. And there are other similar patterns that also often exist in the third declension that give us a lot of words, sort of like fortitude. That's a word a lot of people know. Well, it comes from fortitudo, fortitudinous, and a lot of the words, maybe all of them in English that end in tude, are these tudo-tudinous nouns. And that's actually why in English we have the noun fortitude, but if you wanted to make an adjective out of it, it would be fortitudinal, because you'd use the fortitudin from the genitive stem. Or for that matter, here's another real common pattern that shows up. Faction. Well, I mean, this is classical Latin, so this is factio, factionis, but it looks like the word faction because this is exactly where we get the word faction, and there are so many, like, I could not even begin to guess how many English words we have that end in tion, or if not tion, then sion, and every single one of them comes from a third declension word like this one, where the nominative is factio, and then the genitive adds an n to the stem, which is what we use in English, plus a third declension ending after that m. Did I say m? N. Has 2 videos in a row that I made a mistake in. I'm not going to refilm because I'm tired. But doesn't matter if I'm tired. Y'all need to know about the third declension, and that's what I'm here to tell you about. So, guys, if you have questions about these, make sure that you are reaching out to me in the comments in Google Classroom, particularly in Classroom, because I'm an oaf and I have not figured out how to use comments in YouTube yet. I'm sure it's an easy thing to do once I sit down and do it. But anyway, in the meantime, if you have questions about this, let me know. And be on the lookout for the next video, which is going to deal with the 4th and 5th declension, and then another one on neuters. All right. I will see you ever so soon.